Please send this to the Echo team for the next race.
Holla ballers and welcome back to 2 Point Museum, where the story of the game is growing and growing. I almost feel, in a weird way, like they've held back so much stuff in terms of like what your progression path would be. Try and think of it like an RTS. Like I always go to Command and Conquer because that was my OG. Is that you wouldn't get like Orca attack airplanes, attack helicopters, and mammoth tanks and obelisks of light and all those kind of things until much later in the tech tree. But you knew they existed. Like you could like hear them, you could see things, you know, that you usually got the book so you could see the tech tree of what was coming later. So you were somewhat aware of them, or you would see the enemy using advanced tech before you could get it. Things like that. In this, you have no idea. Like, the only way you know what's coming later is through the discovery menu, which is when you have collected, like, an exhibit, and you get a repeat of that exhibit on an expedition, is that you can then analyze that to gain more knowledge, which will make your guests learn more about it. So you do, like, a study on it, and that your knowledge level will go up. And as you increase your overall knowledge level, you get these, like, renown track unlocks, essentially. But they're usually things like extra decorations, bins, just different sort of styles of things that you can put into them. Occasionally you get some really, really good ones. We got this giant horsey play exhibit where people can ride, you know, like rock and roll horses type things. It's enormous. So you get these like occasional really cool things, but in terms of what creatures or what exhibits you're going to get, that's completely hidden to you. And it's unlocking that as the overall game progresses. It's just giving you more and more just bizarre and cool things that when you get them, even though I think we're probably like 20 hours in now, you get so excited because it's so cool. And then they custom animated a bunch of stuff, because at the very beginning of playing 2 Point Museum, you notice that your guests will jump on your exhibits and they'll play with them and they'll damage them and they'll do things like that. But now you get to the more like exorbitant ones. They have absolutely wacky ones. My highlight of the day here was actually the balloon fish. The balloon fish that we found is an airship with a giant puffer fish, and people ride it and like float around it. It's got these big googly goofy eyes that go with it. And then I discovered that you can actually build outside exhibits, which is something I'm going to expand a bit more on, because there's bonuses for doing that kind of stuff, especially if you get large underground ruins, like the big feet and things like that, that you can get on these pillars, is they need to go outside. So you need to, when I buy a new plot, I generally want to buy it into a giant building so I can build a big museum. It's like, actually, you probably want some outside stuff, which I think is going to be relevant later on, because you could totally decorate the outside, which I had never even considered, because you don't really do that in 2 Point Hospital. You might do it in campus, but I never got that far in. But that's partially the story. Let me bring you up to date with what we actually did and my goals before we get into what this has become, because those are two very different things that are happening right now. It's very rare that we're playing a game where I'm just having an overwhelming amount of fun doing like management stuff, which on the face of it sounds very boring, right? You're just doing management stuff. And I assume like in an ordinary sort of run-of-the-mill stream, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what we unlock next, right? That kind of thing. That is not what has become of our stream at all, to the point where the 2 Point guys are hanging out in our stream, and what my audience has turned it into. It was interesting to see their replies in chat of like, I don't even know what's going on now, because it's devolved into eugenics, incest, children murder, like all the typical things you'd expect from my style stream have appeared, but my audience has also taken that onto an extra level. But in terms of what's happening in the game, I'm so engrossed in the story of the zones. That is so cool. So it was finally time to go back to the Marine Museum, which is down by the shore. And they had mentioned that sea monsters do exist. So I was very excited to see where that goes. And we had left it at 1 star, I think. But by the time we'd circled around and come back to it, we were now capable of going up to 4 stars. So each star level unlocks the next, like, story progression for that map. So you'll get to, like, 2 stars, like I did on the space level, but you can't do more, because then you have, like, overall progression to do, which is, like, you need to collect a bunch. You're, like, locked at 2 stars maximum, but you want to upgrade the rest of your museums to gain an extra 3 stars from somewhere. You don't have to do them all by any means. You can ignore the ones you don't want to do, but you do need to go and do some stuff in other museums, which is great because the other museums are fun as hell as well. And it also gives you a breather from being like locked in to one place for a while. And then you come back with a bunch of new technology, like the industrial technology, the science technology, the prehistoric, the space, the ghosts, all that kind of stuff. So I went back to the marine one. And I was very excited about this to see what the sea monsters were, because that's where we were up to. Working through that, we did get our first sea monsters, which were like Pikachu fish, which actually electrocute people who go into the tank and debuff them. And you have to like coordinate your place because they need to rest every time they deal with these Pikachu fish. And then we started to unlock like lagoon monsters, like actual like humanoid lagoon monsters that need to be dealt with in that way. And then the biggest thing of this map unlocked, or the next progression path that we can go on, which is breeding. Because the way the expeditions work with the fish is a little different, is you tend to bring back a bunch of them. You can send accessories which will get multiples. But your tanks can only hold so much. And you want pristine fish. Pristine are the top level quality of your exhibits. So epics are like peasants, right? You can get commons, which are just trash, throw them away. And epics, which are just whatever once you're running a high quality museum like I am. What you want is pristines. And the game recognizes you probably don't want to just keep going back to places you fully explored on expeditions, so there's no more progression to be done there. You're just trying to get a pristine fish. But you've also unlocked a variety of other new areas where you want to go and collect new exhibits from. So the game recognizes that and it goes, okay, what you can do now is you can actually just have them breed. Enter eugenics. Enter the eugenics portion of our broadcast. Because what you can absolutely do, and I did do this, is you can force even a pair of epic fish to breed over and over again until they produce a pristine fish, which does happen, has a lower chance. Obviously, if you've got 2 pristines, they'll generally produce pristine offspring. But the epics do have a chance to do it. And if you're done with those fish, because they're like low-level fish, you can kind of just leave a breeding tank there and just murder all their children continuously, or sell them, which is what I changed it to. I'm selling them to the local fish or to Joe Exotic to do something with, especially the cool fish like the tiger fish and the tiger sharks and the leopard sharks and all those kinds of things. But generally what you're waiting for is them to have a child that's pristine, and then you're going to kill one of them. One of the adults, one of the parents. You're going to kill one of the parents and then force one of the parents to breed with the child, because that's increasing your odds of getting pristine. Because then so you'll have 2 epic parents that produce a pristine offspring, kill one of the epic parents, and then have the epic parent reproduce with the pristine offspring, because you'll have a higher chance of pristine. And then when that happens, you kill off the other parent, and then you force the siblings to breed to create a full tank of pristine offspring. Shoutouts to Brackers and Damavand, who managed this successfully with the bull sharks and now have a thriving family and no mutations to speak of from what I can see. Absolutely stellar exhibit, really stellar. And then the story develops itself, especially if you're mixing your friends. Obviously, as a streamer, I'm mixing my audience members into who the animals are and what they're doing. And I've still got the board, which is ever expanding, of people who are awful people, good people, who are doing all kinds of things. And this is where it's gone. But the biggest story here is something that I have had no control over whatsoever, because I didn't even find it that funny. And I blamed, like I said, the 2 Point guys were in our chat for most of the day, which was really interesting. Because I think at one point, I think they dropped in to say hi, which devs often usually do. Is they'll drop in because, you know, it's a larger stream of going up for their game. And we do play variety. So, like, you know, we'll drop in with some indie games or some other games, and they'll drop in and say hi. They were there for hours. Like, at one point, I was like, this is the devs' fault. And I think it was like 5 hours after they'd been in the stream. And they came back like, oh, we're still here. Like, we don't know what's happening here. But we are still here as to what you're doing with our game. And it's the gooning tubs. Very relevant to the UK right now, as the UK is really trying to block the gooners from gooning away. If you don't know what gooning is, I imagine you have the context of the internet to put this together as to what gooning is. But when you go on an expedition and you get injured, you have to go into the healing machine, is what it is. It's like a, I actually don't know what they're called because I've not used one myself, but they're like the fully, you sit in a chair and then your body is like fully encased in this like tank. I think they usually use them for like cooling you down and things like that if you're like a pro athlete. But then they've animated it to absolutely look like you're being very stimulated inside this box. Like the head rolls around, they're like, ah. It's probably supposed to be like massage, but that's not what it appears to be. And my audience dubbed this the Goon Cocoon. I didn't, by any means. And so they get very excited now when someone gets to go in the Goon Cocoon. It's escalated. It's escalated to the point where somebody, I'm going to say his name, Streambonker, has recorded an entire song with custom lyrics with a musical backing to Goon Cocoon.
Cocoon, 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 cocoon,
We have several FF14 DJs in the chat. One of the most prominent ones is Miyu. Miyu is known throughout FF14 for some of the best DJ sets and has been at many of our parties. Miyu has done remixes. They've used TTS to take songs. They've used our custom TTS app to get clips of songs. Everything from Rammstein, Metallica, Staying Alive, everything you can think of, to modify it with my voice saying Goon Cocoon to go with it. And dances and emote walls have been developed entirely around the Goon Cocoon. And I didn't... I don't know where this has come from. I have no idea. There's now so much music to go with this. Somebody was genuinely offering to make an album. And I was in here yesterday because we weren't streaming on YouTube because of an error that happened with the OBS update, which completely calamitized our relatively complicated setup over here. It's fixed now. But we were in here yesterday fixing it over the weekend. And Chris went, I've got to warn you, Mike. I've been sent a lot. Like, a lot of stuff that people have been creating. I mean, I'm very inspired by the level of creativity and tech wizardry that's gone into this. But it's quite its own thing. So my goals in game is, my main goal actually primarily is to unlock the space coffin. That's, I think it needs 5 stars to do that, so we're not quite there yet. That's what I would consider my end game right now, because you can play this game for another 200 hours. I don't think we're going to do that. But my current goal is to get that thing unlocked, and I've got a little bit more to go to get there before we move on to something else. But I'm smiling all day, and I'm so happy, because when I started playing this, I was like, oh, people might get a little bored after, like, you know, a few streams of this. Because it's a management game. That has not happened, and that is such a pleasurable place to be. Is like, I'm having so much fun, and everybody else is as well, that I'm just in a great place with it, and I can't recommend the game enough, obviously. Like, the game is phenomenal. So yeah, we'll see where this goes, but if you're missing out on this, because there's no way we can get what's happening over in a TDP, if you're missing it, I would check out some of the VODs, man, because it's just a wacky, wild experience. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.